In this episode, Africa's most dangerous animal opened its jaws wide, inches from his owner's face. Ex-Army Major Marius Els could smell the sweet, chewed grass on the hippo's breath moments before it clamped its jaws around his body. Hit that like button and subscribe right now. This is one of the most terrifying hippo attacks of all time. Welcome to Final Affliction. Humphrey was a hippo. He had been rescued at a young age after getting into difficulties when his river flooded. As a baby, he was taken in by wildlife lovers who cared for him for a short while. But with Africa's most dangerous animal comes a great deal of responsibility, and they could no longer care for him. That's when 40-year-old Marius Els decided to take him in. At that point, Humphrey was 5 months old and was growing fast. Marius was an army major turned farmer who was experienced at keeping some of Africa's wild animals. In the past, he had cared for a giraffe and a rhino, but nothing could prepare him for Humphrey. He allowed the hippo to roam his 400-acre farm, which sat on the banks of the Vaal River in Free State, South Africa. Free State is hot and arid, situated in mid to southeastern South Africa. It is characterized by grassy plains and comprises predominantly of pasture land for the agricultural communities. The Vaal River provides irrigation for the surrounding countryside and farmland. Part of this river ran through Marius's farm. Redirecting some of this water, he built a dam for Humphrey to swim in. In the wild, hippos remain with their mothers for up to 6 or 7 years, which is when they reach sexual maturity. They will suckle from their mothers for up to 8 months and won't become fully independent until they are sexually mature. As he grew up, Humphrey the hippo was learning all the time from Marius. He may have looked up to him, seeing him as a member of his family. Marius certainly felt like the hippo was part of his family in the same way a cat or dog is. Marius spent a great deal of time with the young Humphrey. Soon, the hippo responded to Marius's voice and came to him when he was called. Marius would spend the entire day with his newfound friend. They went swimming together, and Humphrey even allowed Marius to ride on his back, sometimes while trotting through the water and sometimes while grazing on land. Marius even trained Humphrey to open his mouth so that he could brush his teeth. It was quite something to see. Marius would feed sweet apples into the enormous open jaws of Africa's most dangerous animal. The hippo would expose its 20-inch-long canines, razor-sharp, strong, and powerful. Humphrey would gobble the apples up. They were used as a treat or reward when Marius was training him. This way, Humphrey would obey commands and was under strict control by Marius. He had become domesticated, or so Marius thought. As Humphrey grew, so did their bond. Marius thought of him like a son weighing up to 3,000 pounds and standing 5 feet tall. A son that was soon to betray his father. Hippos spend up to 16 hours a day in the water, keeping cool and out of the blazing sun. They can be dangerous both on land and in the water. Attacks in the water are usually territorial. Hippos won't hesitate to attack an intruder who enters their territory. There are frequent reports of boats being upturned by aggressive hippos. Hippos typically graze at night on land. They can wander up to 6 miles each night while eating. Attacks on land typically occur when the hippo feels threatened and a person comes between it and the water. Despite their aggression, hippos are social animals. The babies are often raised in nurseries with unrelated hippos, and groups or pods of adults can number in the hundreds. Locals began to make complaints about the hippo. On more than one occasion, Humphrey wandered out of his enclosure and made his way to the nearby golf course. He wreaked havoc with the golfers, chasing them around and around in delight. Marius would laugh this off, simply describing the behavior of the amphibious giant as playful and friendly. The golfers weren't pleased being chased by a 2,600-pound hippo. But when Marius whistled, Humphrey shook his head at the players and dutifully trotted back to his master. He responded only to his owner, and Marius felt confident in his ability to control one of Africa's largest mammals. But Humphrey's mischievous behavior was becoming increasingly dangerous. On another occasion, Humphrey sought out a 52-year-old man and his 7-year-old grandson. The two of them were paddling by the property in their canoe. Silently, they glided by the farm along the river Vaal when Humphrey rushed into the water. He charged towards them menacingly. Hippos can run at speeds of up to 19 miles per hour on land and push through the water at 5 miles per hour. He was no match for the pair, and they hurriedly jumped out of their boat and scrambled up the nearest tree. With Marius nowhere to be seen, the two terrified locals remained in the tree for over 2 hours, while Humphrey paced around the base of the trunk, becoming increasingly frustrated. They clapped and yelled, trying to scare him away, but Humphrey wasn't having any of it. Eventually, Marius showed up and tempted Humphrey back into his enclosure with an apple, much to the relief of the man and his grandson. Humphrey continued to escape from his enclosure, seeking out mischief when he did so. He ran through neighboring farmland, chasing livestock and killing young calves. He even threw Marius off his back when he didn't want him there. Marius's friends didn't want to go anywhere near Humphrey. He was beginning to become unruly. Although outsiders could see Humphrey was developing increasingly aggressive habits, Marius was blind. He was blinded by the love of his unique and loyal pet. He laughed off any complaints, simply describing the hippo as a lovable, gentle giant. And indeed, he probably was at one time. But as he grew towards adolescence and sexual maturity, Humphrey's urge for dominance grew. He was beginning to find his place in the world. He was beginning to realize his own brute strength and the damage he could inflict without any consequences. Hippos account for around 500 deaths in Africa every year. Some say the number is far higher. Either way, they are the world's most dangerous mammal and twice as deadly as lions. They can open up their jaws 180 degrees and clamp them shut with a bite force 10 times stronger than a human's. Marius documented his life with Humphrey, uploading videos of himself riding on the hippo's back. People loved this spectacle and millions viewed his photos and videos. Comments came flying in and Marius felt good about the attention he was receiving for this special relationship. But Marius's bond was so tight that he, foolishly, trusted Humphrey with his life. On November 12, 2011, tragedy struck. Marius walked into the large expanse of Humphrey's enclosure and onto the riverbank. As usual, Humphrey came trotting up to him. He was boisterous and enthusiastic. As he nudged Marius, he nearly knocked him over. He frequently pushed Marius when he wanted a treat, but his nudges were becoming stronger and he was becoming less patient. Marius handed him an apple, but Humphrey continued to pester him. Marius tried to walk past Humphrey to go down to the river, but the hippo stood still. The enormous animal shook its head and grunted. Marius shrugged off the behavior and tried once more to step past him. Humphrey shook his head again and opened his huge jaws, showing off his enormous canines, a display of aggression and dominance. At that moment, Marius knew something was wrong. Something was different. He knew that this wasn't the hippo he had nurtured as a baby. Humphrey had changed. Mother Nature was coursing through Humphrey's veins and pure instinct led him to attack. Marius could see the glint in Humphrey's eyes. He could see the bristles on his snout. He could smell the freshly chewed grass on the hippo's breath, and then it came. A bite so forceful that Marius could do nothing but gasp. Marius fell to the floor as two of the hippo's canines severed his skin, muscle, and bone. He felt the immense pressure on his torso and heard the crunch of his legs as they gave way. Marius tried to claw his way away, but Humphrey came for him again and again. Mercilessly, the hippo attacked his master. He attacked his caregiver. He killed his friend. Marius breathed his last breath looking into the eyes of his best friend, his unrecognizable eyes, the eyes of a killer. Marius's body rolled into the water and lay submerged until emergency crews discovered it a few hours later. Marius had been betrayed. He had truly believed that he and Humphrey had a special bond, a bond that would last a lifetime. But while you can take the hippo out of the wild, you can never take the wild out of the hippo, who in this case turned on his friend in the worst way possible, bringing him to his unfortunate final affliction.